We live in an era of unprecedented productivity, and yet we're shadowed by this really profound paradox. You look around and we work harder, we produce more, and we generate significantly higher incomes than literally any generation in human history. But what's the result? A lot of us just find ourselves emotionally hollowed out and entirely financially exhausted. There's this immense, often unspoken tension between external validation, that carefully curated image we project out into the world, and internal stability. And by internal stability, I mean the actual unvarnished peace we experience when the screens go dark and we're just alone with our thoughts. This explainer is a dedicated exploration of exactly that tension. We are going to take a very detailed, realistic look at the psychology of modern hyperconsumerism. We'll unpack the hidden behavioral traps embedded in our everyday spending habits, and we'll walk through the painful but necessary transition we all have to make to understand what it actually means to build wealth that lasts. So, right at the core of this modern exhaustion is a fundamental behavioral mystery. And it's a question we really have to ask ourselves. Why do human beings naturally orient their entire lives around the pursuit of expensive things? Honestly, it defies basic survival logic. Think about it. We routinely trade our absolute most finite, non-renewable resource, which is our time, taking on immense psychological stress, taking on physical fatigue, simply to acquire flashy, depreciating assets. We systematically trade the irreplaceable hours of our human lives for objects that are mathematically guaranteed to lose their excitement within just a few weeks of purchase. It's a cyclical trap, and it ensnares millions of people in the state of perpetual labor. To dismantle this trap, we first have to confront the underlying biological and psychological mechanics that actually drive this irrational behavior. The real tragedy of this dynamic lies in the severe misallocation of our life's energy. Just look at the contrasts here. We actively pour our capital and our attention into highly visible luxuries, the designer brands, the premium vehicles, the absolute latest technological hardware. And we do this because these are tangible artifacts of success. They're easily photographed, they're easily quantified, and they are instantly recognizable by strangers on the street. Yet, in the fierce pursuit of these visible markers, we quietly erode the invisible necessities that actually sustain human well-being. We cannibalize our own quality of sleep, we sacrifice genuine peace of mind, we completely surrender our unstructured free time, and we neglect our deepest relationships. We are willingly destroying the foundational, invisible pillars of a healthy life, all just to subsidize the public, visible symbols of wealth. It's a sobering reality check. Section 1. The price of status. To understand this, we have to look back. Evolutionary biology dictates that our ancestors survived by securing their place within a tribe. Back then, social acceptance wasn't just some luxury. It was a literal matter of life and death. If you were cast out, you didn't survive. Period. Today, that ancient biological imperative has been meticulously hijacked by modern consumerism, and this brings us to the mechanism of status psychology. In the modern marketplace, the vast majority of premium purchases are completely detached from practical utility. We don't acquire a heavily branded luxury jacket because it provides superior protection from the rain and wind. We acquire it to leverage signaling theory. We are essentially purchasing social admiration. We're buying a manufactured sense of belonging and emotional validation. We take the capital we traded our life energy to earn, and we spend it entirely to secure an artificial rank in a perceived social hierarchy. Section 2. Dopamine versus delayed rewards. Every single financial decision we make is essentially a battleground between two competing neurological pathways. On one side, we have instant pleasure. This is impulsive shopping, rapid lifestyle upgrades, aesthetic consumption. These actions deliver a massive, immediate spike of dopamine to the brain. It's a powerful, euphoric rush that mimics the feeling of actual accomplishment. But on the exact opposite side, we have delayed rewards. Systematic investment plans, compounding index funds, physical exercise, the grueling process of acquiring high-income skills. These pursuits, they're inherently unglamorous. They are slow, highly repetitive, and often incredibly boring in the short term. The profound tragedy of human neurology is that the dopamine spike from a luxury purchase crashes rapidly, leaving us feeling empty again, while the slow, invisible math of compounding interest quietly builds unshakable generational value over decades. The harsh truth is that our brains are quite literally wired to fail at modern, multi-decade financial planning. We evolved in an environment of immediate physical scarcity. In that environment, prioritizing instant, short-term rewards was absolutely the optimal survival strategy. Eat the food now, because it might not be here tomorrow. But in a complex modern economy, this exact instinct becomes the dopamine trap. True, valuable assets, whether we're talking about financial portfolios, deep human relationships, or physical health, they grow at an agonizingly slow pace. They require a level of stoic patience that completely contradicts our evolutionary programming. Quick, superficial excitement will systematically feel more attractive to our nervous system than boring consistency. Navigating modern finance means you have to have the immense discipline to override millions of years of evolution. You have to consciously choose the invisible, slow-growing asset over the highly visible, instantly gratifying lifestyle upgrade. Section 3. The social media trap. Now, if our biology presents a severe hurdle to wealth creation, the modern digital landscape acts as a hyper-accelerant for financial ruin. We all exist under this crushing architecture of invisible social pressures. Every day, we're subjected to a relentless stream of carefully edited, financially leveraged influencer lifestyles. And this generates a chronic, low-grade anxiety that we are continuously falling behind our peers. Modern marketing has evolved way beyond just selling the utility of a product. It now sells identity, actively weaponizing our deep-seated insecurities. Furthermore, the financial industry has entirely normalized this overconsumption through the proliferation of easy debt. The buy now, pay later culture is everywhere. Debt is no longer viewed as a systemic risk. Instead, it's been rebranded as just a monthly subscription to relevance. It completely masks the catastrophic long-term consequences of spending your future hours of labor for present-day status. Comparison quietly turns normal life into emotional dissatisfaction. Let that sink in for a moment. When human beings are subjected to a relentless digital stream of curated perfection, a ceaseless algorithmic feed of extreme luxury, flawless aesthetics, and limitless leisure, our baseline for reality becomes violently distorted. An otherwise perfectly normal, stable, and deeply happy life suddenly feels woefully inadequate. This invisible, manufactured pressure forces otherwise rational people to liquidate their future security. They start spending capital they do not actually have, simply to soothe the artificial inadequacy that was implanted in them by comparison. Section 4. Expensive v. valuable. To achieve any sort of real financial clarity, we must draw a harsh, uncompromising line between what simply costs money and what actually enriches the human experience. There is a profound philosophical distinction between price and value. High price tags guarantee absolutely nothing but a heavy capital expenditure, some temporary physiological excitement, and fleeting social validation. Value, however, operates on a completely different paradigm. Value is measured by long-term usefulness, by its direct contribution to personal growth, and by the quiet stability it brings to an individual's life. True value is often fundamentally unmarketable. The sheer amount of capital required to acquire an object has absolutely zero correlation with its ability to provide enduring, genuine worth. When we critically examine the allocation of modern capital, a truly tragic discrepancy emerges between what we finance and what actually sustains us. We pour immense resources into heavily branded garments that will literally be worn a handful of times, while entirely neglecting the consistent financial discipline that could buy our ultimate freedom. We eagerly finance trendy hardware that will be obsolete and totally devoid of excitement in 12 months, yet we routinely compromise our sleep and our dietary health, which are the absolute sole protectors of our physical vitality for the next 50 years. We accumulate flashy status symbols to project an image of power while completely ignoring the emotional stability and continuous intellectual growth that actually dictate the trajectory of a successful human life. We consistently, almost predictably, confuse upfront financial cost with long-term human worth. And this persistent confusion leads to what is arguably the ultimate pitfall for the modern earner: lifestyle inflation. As our income increases, we frequently upgrade our lifestyle and our expenses at a velocity that far outpaces the growth of our productive assets or our actual financial wisdom. Make no mistake, this is a mechanism of self-imposed poverty. An increase in revenue, rather than being aggressively deployed into compounding investments or defensive emergency reserves, is instantly absorbed by higher rent, premium vehicles, and inflated dining habits. The additional income merely acts as a trap. It scales up the individual's baseline anxiety and their monthly burn rate. The earning power increases, sure, but the financial freedom actively decreases. The individual is spending everything they make merely to look wealthy, rather than undergoing the quiet, disciplined process of actually becoming wealthy. Section 5. The value of peace. Capital itself is entirely static, but human psychology is incredibly fluid. As we age, our emotional utility for money undergoes a radical transformation. In the early decades of adulthood, in our 20s, money is purely a vehicle for excitement. It's the raw fuel for independence and exploration. As we transition into our 30s, the complexity of life heavily expands, and money morphs into this dual-edged sword. It's about projecting social status while simultaneously managing compounding life responsibilities. However, as individuals cross into their 40s and beyond, a deep psychological exhaustion often sets in. The illusion of status shatters. The performative aspect of wealth loses all of its appeal. Money ceases to be a tool for impressing strangers and fundamentally shifts into a mechanism for defense. We finally realize that the highest, most profound utility of capital is not flashiness. It is the aggressive protection of our peace, our unleveraged time, and our absolute security. Ultimately, we are forced by reality to redefine the true markers of a successful life. The genuine apex of wealth is not visible on a balance sheet, and you will certainly never see it on a social media feed. It is found in sustained physical health and physiological vitality. It is the possession of highly flexible, unleveraged time, which allows you to dictate the terms of your own existence. It is deeply rooted in stable, integrated family relationships that provide a secure psychological base. It's the achievement of emotional calmness, having a nervous system that is not constantly redlining due to financial stress. It is the immense, quiet power of having options and unshakable security. And here's the reality. None of these markers can be financed. None of them can be rushed. They are the direct result of decades of quiet discipline, immense patience, and a wholesale rejection of hyperconsumerism. So as we wrap up this explainer, we are ultimately left with a quiet, very uncomfortable question that demands rigorous self-examination. Are we buying things consciously or emotionally? Every single transaction we make is a transfer of our life energy, and we have to deeply analyze the architecture of our own desires. We must determine if an acquisition is actually grounded in genuine necessity, practical utility, and long-term value, or if it is merely a highly expensive anesthetic. We have to recognize when we are using capital as a band-aid for profound emotional insecurity or as a desperate, fleeting attempt to signal our worth to a society that, quite frankly, is too entirely consumed with its own anxieties to actually notice. Real wealth is what you no longer need to prove. True financial, psychological, and emotional maturity arrives at the exact moment the performance ends. It is the profound, liberating realization that the most incredibly valuable, irreplaceable things in the human experience are exactly the things you no longer have the slightest desire to show the world. Keep that in mind the next time you find yourself reaching for your wallet.